This is a closely fought classical match between Robert James Fischer and Mikhail Tal, and this is a must-watch game actually because there's a lot of attacks and counter-attacks in this game. And Fischer is playing with the white pieces here, and Mikhail Tal is playing with the black pieces here. So this is the French defense, and Bishop comes to b4, makes this the win-over variation of the French defense. So now this knight is pinned, which allows you to capture this pawn with the black's d4 pawn. You can capture the e pawn, and the knight will not be able to capture back because of the pin. So the pawn push to e5 is normally played to prevent the capture of that pawn. And here, as you can see, this bishop is threatening to capture this knight over here, even though this bishop is a very good bishop, and the light square bishop is actually inactive due to black's own pieces. So pawn push to c5 now, and a3 hitting the bishop, and bishop retreats to a5, and b4 now again attacking the bishop. So instead of retrieving the bishop, the pawn capture, the c pawn captures the d4 pawn, creating a counter attack on the knight over here. So Fischer ignores the attack and goes to brings his queen to g4, attacking this pawn. And if this pawn is gone, your queen is under, your rook is under threat, and the king side is under threat. And because you opened up on the queen side, it prevents you from castling on the queen side, or the king will be less protected as well. So knight to e7 is played. A better move would be to push the pawn here to g6, and but now the bishop is captured by the pawn, and the knight is captured back. And after that, this pawn is grabbed by Fischer with the queen to g7 move, and the rook comes in here to g8, attacking the queen, and he grabs the other pawn as well. So Fischer is now up by a pawn, and knight now comes to b to c6. Knight b come to c6, attacking this unprotected pawn on the e file, and knight to f3 is played, protecting that particular pawn, and queen now comes to c7, bringing in more pressure to that unprotected e pawn. And a better move would be to capture this free pawn over here with your queen, and create some pressure on support on this particular pawn on c3, and more pressure on the king, which is uncastled at the moment. So but bishop to b5 is now played, pinning this knight, so this knight cannot go in and capture this particular pawn. But a better move would be to bring your bishop over here to protect this pawn. So bishop move was played, and bishop to d7 is played, unpinning that knight, and castles on the king side. Fischer and Tal castles on the queen side. So bishop goes to g5 now, basically here. So here, because of the rook here, your king is already under attack, and this pawn is basically pinned. A better move would be to push the pawn to g3 here, but Fischer chose this line, bishop to g5, and after that the knight captures the pawn, and it creates a lot of possibilities over here. So if you capture because if you capture this knight with your bishop, this knight is unprotected, then this knight will jump in here with a check. I'll just show you what will happen. This knight will jump in with a check, and this pawn is pinned, so you cannot capture back, and the king moves here. And once the rook goes here, if you do not capture this rook, it could be checkmate and game over pretty soon over here. So even now the queen can just come over here and checkmate as well once this move is played, basically, because once the queen is away, you can just bring over here queen over here and threaten checkmate. So because of that, that's the bad idea. And after this move, the knight captures the knight, and the bishop captures the particular bishop. And after this, the knight jumps in here to f7 and captures the f7 pawn, creating a double an attack on this rook, and also protecting this bishop, which is hanging with an attack on the by the rook. And this light square bishop of black is also attacking the rook in return. So Tal goes for the capture of the rook, and a better move would be to bring your rook over here and attack this knight. And but he goes for the capture, which allows the knight to capture the rook, and the rook captures this hanging bishop, and after which the knight retrieves to e6, pinning both the rook and the queen over here. But it's okay, because you can just bring your rook over here and capture this pawn with a check. And once the king moves in here, your queen is under attack, so the queen got to move. It moves to e5, threatening this knight, and which allows you the rook to capture this hanging bishop, and your rook is hanging, and at the same time the queen can capture this knight as well. So the queen captures the knight, and the king captures the rook, and which create q into g4 plus check. And after this, basically, as of this earlier position, both the players agreed for a draw, because the following moves will repeat on its own, basically, and the game will end up in a draw. So as of this position, both the players agreed to a draw, and the match was drawn. But it's a very nice match. Even though drawn, both players played fantastically well for the draw to be reached. And even though Fischer is looks up by a rook, and maybe few pawns as well. So, but because of this, continuous checks, a draw would be agreed. So, thanks for watching. We'll be back with more such classic games between great players. Thank you very much.